Hello, welcome to Connie Martinson Talks Books. My guest could rightfully be called a woman of all seasons. She has had many different like a cat of 9 lives. She has led many different lives in one life. She has been on Broadway. She's been married to one of the world's greatest stars. She was a woman who took off, and she was a woman who believed in democracy. The book is called The Memory of All That, Love and Politics in New York, Hollywood, and Paris. My guest is Betsy Blair, an Academy Award nominee, and the book is published by Connie. Welcome, Betsy.
Thank you.
Truly, as I said, a woman of all seasons and many lives.
I like that description.
Beginning in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Taking the train, being the kid who's starring in the dance shows, a model, and you finally get to Broadway and Billy Rose.
Yes.
How were you cast?
Well, at the Diamond Horseshoe in the nightclub, Billy Rose's Diamond Horseshoe. Like all choruses, you sort of walked on stage in your street clothes, you know, your coat still, and you walked across the stage, and these men looked at you, and they said, go this way or that, and if you went that way, you went to the dressing room to put on your rehearsal clothes, your shorts and your top, so they could see your legs. And they didn't ask you to dance yet. And then, so they'd end up with probably 2 or 3 times the number. No, at that stage, that was the first stage was dress. The second stage was shorts. And there they'd have 5 times as many as they wanted, but they discarded you then physically, so they'd end up with twice as many as they wanted. And then you got to dance. And so then they chose finally.
And among the people, or the men watching you, was a guy you had met the day or so before, yes, and you thought was a busboy.
Yes, yes. The day before, I went on the wrong day, and all prepared for this, you know, I was going to knock them dead as this dancer. And I went in, and there was a young man moving chairs and tables around, and I said, is this where the dancers, you know, where I should be? I've come to the call for dancers. And he said, no, it's tomorrow. And I said, no, it isn't, it's today. Today's the 9th. He said, no, today's the 10th. He said, no, today's the 9th. And I thought he was rather presumptuous, fresh. I thought he was, you know, wicked and flirting. So I said, thank you, and was going. And he called after me and said, are you a dancer? And I said, yes. And he said, are you a good dancer? And then I stopped and turned around and said, very. And then I left. And then when I got there the next day to the call with 600 other girls, or 599 other girls, there he was, the choreographer, with the director and Billy Rose himself and the stage manager. They were the men that were deciding who was going to be in the show.
And the man was Gene Kelly.
Yes, yes. Yes.
But your romance in New York at that point walks out of a Comden and Green musical.
Yes.
I mean, there's you, there's another man, Dick, and they took such good care of you.
Yes.
And you fell so in love with this choreographer, dancer.
Yes, yes. I mean, it was, well, I knew it. I didn't know it at the time, of course. At the time, it all seemed natural. It was just happening. But quite soon, I realized that in a year and a half, and being so young, and there all of a sudden I had been in the chorus of a nightclub. Then I discovered it was better to be in the chorus of a show. So I got in. I didn't get into the first show I tried, but then I got into Panama Hattie.
Oh, Panama Hattie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there I was in the chorus of Panama Hattie. And it was quite a good chorus. It had June Allison and Jane Ball and Doris and Constance Dowling and Miriam Franklin, who was a choreographer. I mean, it was rather
And
good.
Gene, meanwhile, was making his name with one of the great shows of all time, Pal Joey.
Yes, yes, yes. And
I think he and Bob Fosse were the 2 best Pal Joeys one could see.
Oh, yes, it was Bob Fosse in the revival. I never saw it.
In Summer Stock, I saw him in.
Yes.
And they had a sort of a masculinity to their dance.
Yes.
Now, how old are you when you get married?
17.
Just.
Yes.
I mean, at that point in your life, nothing went wrong.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I
mean, Gene has a great contract at MGM, or rather with,
first with David Selznick.
Yes. Then with MGM,
yes.
and from there on in, it was glory time.
Yes, yes, and I had a baby very soon.
Help in the house?
Yes. Oh, yes.
And you're going to acting class, and you're acting.
Yes.
When did you work in Glass Menagerie?
Oh, that was it must have been, well, we arrived on Pearl Harbor Day at the end of 1941, so it must have been 1940. Oh, no, it was 1946. It was after the war, because I had photographs of Carrie with me, my little girl. And then I wasn't in any movies until, at that time I was still saying I'm a theater actress, you know, I don't care about the movies. I was desperate to be in the movies. Yeah. But because I'd been so pretentious and said, no, I'm a serious stage actress, I couldn't try. And then finally George Cukor asked me to play a bit. So I got in. But
a man whose name has both been in your book and a recent book of Norma Barsman, Lloyd Goff.
Yes.
He was almost an entree into joining the Communist Party.
Well, I had been in New York to the Marxist classes in his apartment. So when I became more and more involved in political ideas and actions and committees for many causes, the Joint Anti-Fascist Committee, the Refugee Committee, Elect Henry Wallace Committee, many things. Gradually, it was actually what were called the Sleepy Lagoon riots in the Mexicans downtown.
For anybody who doesn't know, those were, what were they called?
The
Zoot Suiters.
The Pachuco gangs. I mean, it was really a terrible time where the
races clashed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And witnessing that, taking part, Orson Welles had organized a group of people to try to raise money to defend these Mexican boys. And we succeeded in that their sentences were repealed, and it was all a mistake, the ones that was sent to jail. But I became conscious of the great disparity between my life and what I saw around me, and that it seemed to me that the most effective way to fight was joining together. And the people that seemed in the forefront of the fight for all these American ideals were the communists. So I asked my friend Lloyd Goff, because I'd attended the Marxist classes in his apartment in New York, I assumed that he would know how I went about joining the Communist Party. And he said he would he would tell them that I was interested. And then he came back and said, no, they don't want you.
Yeah, who's getting turned down?
Because the message was that I was married to a very important man, Gene, and that Gene was a good man, you know, and a left-wing man, a Democrat, but he wasn't a communist, and it would cause friction and trouble, and I'd be better off not joining the party. So I didn't.
Yeah.
Gene, of course, in the meantime, had said he thought I'd be the worst communist in the world.
Why?
Well, because I was not very good at being told what to do. I wouldn't have liked any of that, he didn't think.
So when Louis B. Mayer calls you into his office, you show up in the nice little navy blue suit, the white gloves, and who me? Yes. Well, it was a moment where we knew we were in a battle, we were in a struggle. Yeah.
And so playing a part, trying to fool him seemed the best strategy. And of course, it's hopeless. He pretended that I'd done well, and I thought I had fooled him and made him think I was this simple, good girl. And at the same time, I was still blacklisted. Yeah.
The studios at that point, and I guess still a little bit today, once you were under their aegises, they controlled you, they made you feel good, but it was still not freedom. Would you read just from your book, will you talk about that, Betsy, please?
Yes, okay. The studio system was marvelously productive. The studio took care of everything for their stars, but the studio executives did consider them as properties to be used for as long as they were popular. They may have loved the actors for their talent and success, but they also hated them for their talent and success. The actors had more fun. They were almost invariably younger, handsomer, and more charming than the bosses. And with the exception of a few who actively fought for quality and artistry, such as David Selznick, Arthur Freed, perhaps Darryl Zanuck, and before our time, Irving Thalberg, they thought of these stars as a necessary evil, as children to be controlled, and the whole system was geared to keeping them childish. If an actor wasn't as tough and intelligent as Gene, he was likely to believe his own publicity and lose track of himself. And I guess I was some kind of oddball. I don't know why I just never bought the Hollywood system. I didn't want a swimming pool. I didn't want a fancy car. And after 2 winter trips to New York, where I enjoyed the warmth of my mink coat, I didn't even want it. I traded it in for a nutria jacket for my mother, a white mink shoulder wrap for premieres, and a dark green rabbit fur coat for me. I guess I was my mother's child, a Democrat.
Thank you. You said fun. The Kellys' household on Saturday night could find Judy Garland singing, Gene, I guess, tapping a little bit around, and who would know who was playing, including one evening with Greta Garbo.
Yes.
I mean, incredible times. And then I love this picture of you on the way to Europe with
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
and on the other side, the 2 other extraordinary dancers and women with Gene.
Yes.
Jeannie Cohn and Carol
Jeannie
Haney.
Coyne and Carol Haney.
Yeah.
Carol Haney was the great dancer, and Jeannie was very, very good dancer and a wonderful, wonderful girl who became Gene's second wife.
Yeah. And had also been married to Stanley Donen.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it was like you were all in a Mickey Rooney thing of, we got a barn, let's put on a show.
Yes. Yes.
Tell me about going to Europe for that, in the dance, where Gene, there was no conversation, it was just invitation to a dance.
Yes. Well, it was a film that he really was longing to make and believed in, and I think it wasn't very successful in one sense. It was in 3 parts, and with different composers and different stories, and one included a cartoon, a bit like the famous dance with Jerry in Anchors Away. But it just meant a lot to it just meant a lot to Gene, and he worked like a demon because it was his baby, and he got all the great dancers from America, from Paris, from London, and it was very difficult, very beautiful, and ultimately, well, we loved it. I loved it. He loved it. I don't think it was very successful. I think it was too hard, a full-length movie with no dialogue, even though there was a story to follow, as in a ballet.
Betsy, we should say, because people, you know, you too had your own career going. It didn't have the flamboyance of the star of musical comedy, but you were nominated for Marty. You then go to Europe, and I had no idea the depth of the career you had as an actress over in Europe.
Yes, it was very interesting, and I think I hadn't really devoted myself to myself, in a sense. Not that I was unhappy doing that. I didn't feel put upon in any way. It's only that when I did leave and go to Europe, I was suddenly free, so that acting became, my work became equally important to my life.
Well, it had to be in a way, because you leave Hollywood was not, I mean, we talk about community property, but talk about a smart lawyer. Greg Boutzer was not exactly a no-name. And you end up with, what, $18,000 a year for 10 years?
Yes, yes.
And you've got to support a child, and
Well, I mean,
yeah,
Gene was very agreeable, and he paid for school. And I mean, you know, no, it wasn't acrimonious, horrible like that. It was just very bad until the settlement was done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a man named Roger.
Yes.
How did you meet him?
I met him at the Cinematheque. That's the French, like the French Academy.
Yeah.
And at a party, they're very big on cultural events, the French. I love it. I love it. And I had worked as a favor to Anatole Litvak. I'd been a dialogue coach to help his French actors in a movie he was making in English in France. And there I had met a great actor called Serge Reggiani. And Roger was a friend of his. So when I met him at the Cinematheque, he said, I know all about you because Serge told me. And then we'll all have lunch, he said, with Serge. And then he called and said, would I have lunch alone with him? He didn't say alone, he said, would I have lunch with him? So I said yes. So.
And how many years were you and Roger together?
5.
5 years.
Yeah.
You started a film company together?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. What films did you produce?
We produced a film, 2 short films, beautiful, beautiful. You shouldn't say it about something you did yourself. One was directed by Joris Evans, who was a great documentary director, about the Seine, the river. And the other was by Pierre Prévert, the filmmaker brother of the poet Jacques Prévert. And they were both very, very, it was fun, it was interesting. They were successful in that they won prizes in small festivals and things. And then we did produce one feature film that was from an idea of my friend, Roger, that I'd like to say Roger all the time, because I was so pleased to be speaking French and to be having a whole French experience. And he directed it, and it was a co-production with China about a little boy who finds a kite flying toward him in the sky, and he flies off to China, and there's a panda, and it was a sort of
charming
children's fable, dream, but could be interpreted as anyone's dream.
Have you stayed friends with him?
Well, I did, but he isn't alive anymore.
Yeah, because you obviously stayed friends as well with Gene Kelly.
Yes. Oh, yes. I think, yes, yes, I did. Partly because it was such an experience that was so amazingly good for me. I mean, I was so lucky to have those 16 years with him. And then we had Carrie, so, and I'm getting a bit misty.
Don't get
it's too late.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you do open the book with 3 very pathetic pages of Gene in his last year, where life shouldn't have ended that way for him.
Yes.
He was in a sense cut off from you, from his children, and became somebody else's property.
Well, I don't know how to say it, and I don't think he was cut off from me. I mean, I don't think that would have been very important to him by then. He'd had his wonderful second marriage with Jeannie and 2 more children, but it was the 3 children. I mean, Jeannie had died of leukemia, which was a great tragedy, but it was the 3 children that felt alienated and separated. But I can't say that. I just know that he didn't have the happy ending he should have.
Yeah.
It was very difficult. I'm sure it was difficult for him to have strokes, and he was,
not pleasant.
No.
I now come to the 3rd act for Betsy Blair. You're in England and you meet Carol Rice?
Yes, Carol Rice, yes. And I did, this is terrible. He did die in November, so I'm still...
I'm so sorry, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm still grieving, but I did have 40 wonderful years, and he was a lovely, wonderful man.
And a brilliant, brilliant director as well.
I mean, I think that's been the best thing. The 3 men I chose, or who chose me.
Sort
or
of like
whatever.
The Loves of
Yes.
Lydia, the old movie.
Yeah. Was that a happy thing? Did she
don't-
have happy loves?
I think so, yeah.
I don't know. But I mean, I think it's very lucky that.
Tell me about the courage it took to get up and say, I'm leaving this wonderful life on Rodeo Drive and go off to Europe, and then leaving a life where at Rue de Bac and saying that, like closing doors.
Yes, that is, I did learn a lot about myself while writing this book, and I'm not sure if I've come to any conclusions. I do think it was somehow quite brave and strong to leave Rodeo Drive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to leave Jean, to leave America, to leave everything that had made me feel so safe and secure.
Yeah.
But I did fall in love in France,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it was growing up. It's sort of corny to say, but I had been a child, and
Yeah.
I did have to become a grown-up.
Was it a little bit of sex being your drug of choice?
No, I don't think it was.
Yeah.
I think it was suddenly feeling free, and also feeling responsible. No, it wasn't sex by itself, although the feeling that I didn't have to please anybody, which does include during making love, that you're not doing anything to be a good girl or to please your mother at dancing school or to please your husband. You just are,
Yeah.
which maybe happens to everybody eventually, but it happened to me then.
Yeah.
Or you hope it happens to everybody eventually. So I didn't think of it as sex. It was changing my life. It was being an independent woman. It was not being a baby anymore.
A woman of independent means, as Betsy Haley has written. How long did it take you to write the book?
About 3.5 or 4 years.
So you started it before Carol's demise.
Oh, yes, yes. Oh, he
Yeah.
knew it well. He'd seen it all. I just did cry when the actual object came, because if you've never written a book before, the object is very thrilling.
Yeah.
And of course, there was this great moment quite recently, and I was happy and sad.
Yeah. At the same moment. How is your daughter?
My daughter's great.
Yeah.
She's just wonderful.
She did not become an actress or a performer.
No, she became a child analyst and founded a nursery school in Ann Arbor, Michigan, with special help. It's a mixed nursery school. It's a very healthy environment, but with attention from the psychoanalytic point of view.
Do you still act, Betsy?
Well, yesterday at the book festival, a
Yeah.
young woman came up to me and said, "Do you still act?" And I looked at her and I said, "Yes."
Ask me, give me a part.
She said, "I have a film I want to make. I'm making, and I'd like you and Ernest Borgnine to play the grandparents." Well, that would be sensational fun.
Wouldn't that be great? Which proves the circle does go around.
Maybe, yes.
Yeah. And home now is still Paris. England,
London.
rather.
Yeah.
London.
Yes, I can't decide anything yet. It'll take everyone says you mustn't make decisions when you're grieving. You must wait.
Yeah.
So it's New York or London. I don't know.
Yeah.
At the
Maybe
moment,
the
I'm in London.
world. Because in this book, when you go to, where is it, Algiers with Orson Welles
yes.
to do Desdemona, and then he runs out of money.
Yes, yes.
Or you and Jeannie fly to Cairo.
Yes, yes.
I mean, the experiences in the book are really fabulous.
Yes.
Even Antonioni, who said about you.
Yes. The worst 2 hours of his life?
Yes.
Of his professional life?
Yes. It's an incredible story. Betsy, thank you for sharing it. You're also been active in Europe with progressive measures and democracy.
Yes. And I believe, I continue to believe all those things. It's necessary to be a full person. Somebody said, were the people who were so political, were they also artists? I said, artists are only after the truth. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what it is, and it's the same impulse, the same thing.
Question, how was it working with Julie Hayden?
Oh.
Yeah.
When I was her understudy, well, it wasn't much fun because often she wouldn't be there, and the curtain used to go up at 8:30 in the theater, and I would be ready at 8:15 because she wasn't there, and she'd come dashing in and say, "George says I mustn't let you go on. I must do it." So there I was, made up and in costume, and she'd go on. She'd get made up and into costume. And so I never did get to go on stage with Laura Taylor.
Yeah.
I did rehearse with her, but I never got on stage.
I think maybe even that was still a thrill in enough.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great actress. And what a great life. Thank you, Betsy. Will you autograph my book?
Thank you for having
And if
me.
you'd like my pleasure. If you would like a copy of our newsletter, Good Books, send me a stamp, self-addressed envelope to Good Books, P.O. Box 69, 1640. Los Angeles, California, 90069. Look for our column in the Beverly Hills Courier, for us on the web at www.conniemartinson.com. Come in at 9 Pacific Coast time or 3 or 11:30. The program is streamed, so Betsy, even in London, will be able to go on the computer, come to the website and see the program. Modern Miracles. Or write to us at talksbooks@lycos.com. We'll tell you about some other books we've liked recently. Support your local library. Libraries are our finest democratic institution in America. No matter who or what you are, you can go in that library, get a library card, and take a child with you. Teach them to respect books. That if you take a book out, it's due back at a certain time. And if you, by the way, have kept a book out, take it back. It's still, someone is waiting for that book, and you owe it to all of us. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Betsy.